How do you think the world got so unequal? What's your gut?
Imperial expansion throughout history.
Just that?
Well, that's a lot of it, for sure. Starting from a place of like people with money and power went to other places who didn't have the same amount of power.
Okay.
And took stuff, or like basically like took stuff, underdeveloped, exploited, things like that, and we are where we are.
You use their power. You use the word imperialism, by the way. Forget that he said that, because you're going to immediately label this guy as a leftist and so on. But like, whatever. I see it as almost like King of the Mountain. Did you ever play that when you were young?
Like King of the Hill?
King of the Hill?
Knock the guy off the middle.
Yeah, you got like, so here, just step up here, right, really
Stand.
fast. Yeah, just stand right there. The way the King of the Hill works, or King of the Mountain, is he's got leverage on, he got up the top of the mountain. So how'd you get up? Why do you think you got up there and I didn't get up there?
I climbed first.
You climbed first.
Yeah.
Maybe you got lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe where I tried to climb the mountain, it wasn't really easy for me to climb, but you just happened to you climb this mountain in a space that you had more resources, you had better luck, and there you are. Maybe he's faster. Maybe he's smarter. Maybe you're stronger. There are lots of reasons. So, all right, here, have a seat. So that's the imperialism thing. When you use a word like imperialism,
Right.
It's like, no, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But you said that. Sometimes, you just get...
I guess I just meant I meant that, but I also meant as in like just might makes right. Like, you start from wherever you start from.
If you're the first one to develop a weapon and like, yeah, man, you can use that. Hey, by the way, what's your worldview of what progress looks like? What's progress to you?
In what sense?
Economic and social and political.
I guess improving and like expanding the quality of like the material conditions that people live in.
Okay.
Improving their quality of life and like standard of living.
Okay, cool. And we all know if we go back to that graph about how the wealthy, the 1%, and I talk about all these people in here, y'all got lucky.
Yeah.
You got lucky. You weren't born in a lot of other places. You were born here. You weren't born in rural West Virginia, where if you were born in rural West Virginia, bro, you'd probably be in rural West Virginia. Maybe you go to community college or something, but whatever. It depends on a lot of things. How do you think about immigration that's fueled by actions that the receiving country, meaning like in this case the United States, immigration, people coming here because of actions that we took as a nation, things that we've done?
Yeah, it's something I think about like often, and in my mind, it's like the main source of immigration, the main cause of immigration. I think like to begin with, I don't think anyone wants to leave the place they were born and would much rather like make it a better place.
Yeah.
But I think whatever external factors push them to go somewhere else.
Why do you think people want to stay where they're born?
Familiarity, nostalgia, family ties, just things like that. You feel connected to the place you were born. I do.
Yeah. Listen, man, everyone in this class, those of you who are thinking, I want to go live in another country, you don't know when you'll see your family again. Might be 5 years, might be 10 years, might be 20 years. You may never see them again. You don't know what's going to happen in that other country. How many of you want to go and live in another country then? How does that change your mind? Because that's what historically we're talking about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I just put this up here, 50 years of U.S. intervention in Latin America and the Caribbean. Yeah. This is kind of some of what you were talking about.
Definitely. This is exactly what I was talking about.
And the people who don't know anything about this, what do you want to say? What would you say?
I love America. And as an American, I recognize like all of the things my country has done throughout history that have had a negative effect on the world. And one of those things, many of those things has been meddling and intervention for American interests, which may have benefited us, the domestic population of the United States, but disastrously disaffected millions and millions of people throughout history. And a lot of that is like something that is still affecting us to this day, and it's a reason why the U.S. looks like what it looks like right now.
And you benefit, right? You've
Correct.
benefited from that.
A lot.
As someone who has family from Colombia and Cuba.
Exactly.
Like they came here to benefit
Yeah.
from the Yankee imperialism around other places, right? And that's okay though, right? Like I mean it is what it is. What would you say to people that say, well, if we didn't do that, some other country would have done it? Like if we didn't go and mess in Latin America and involve ourselves and take resources and install authoritarian governments and dictatorships and overthrow countries and send our military down there to make sure that people did what they wanted to do, to make sure that when we wanted land in Ecuador or Costa Rica or Brazil, the government, our corporations, the government would make sure, or we wanted access to the mines in Bolivia, the tin mines, the government of Bolivia would give us access to the tin mines. Like, what do you say to people who say, yeah, well, if we didn't do that, somebody else would?
I don't think that's true. I think I think a person who would say that would probably say like the USSR or like a communist influence in Latin America would have done the same thing, but I just don't think that's true. I think most of what the American State Department and government did throughout this period was just sabotage the political movements of the majority of these countries that were fighting for equal rights for women, minorities, indigenous people, and the rights of workers to own their means of
How about
production.
the rights of their businesses to compete fairly on the international market?
Correct.
You remember seeing those photos?
Yeah, I remember.
So the problem is, people see that and they're like, oh, man, we can't have that. This is right on the border of Mexico. Tapachula is right on the border of Guatemala and Mexico. And so thousands of people came up and they're now at the border of the U.S. What do you do? What do you do with them?
With them specifically, I mean, you started from square one where you already messed up. You made this happen, so.
Okay, but do you let these 7,000, you want to know why so many of them are there?
Asylum.
No, because there were other caravans before them.
Yeah.
So these people back home are like getting text messages, so we're filling out paperwork to be refugees, so then they come. Okay, so now what do you do with these guys?
From the point of view as like the person who turned on the faucet,
Yeah.
you kind of just got to let the water run, right?
Until how long, dude? Another 70,000, 700,000?
Yeah.
Like how far?
I don't know. Until you feel like you left the water on long enough?
Yeah. See, this is where you get stuck.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is where the pragmatists come in with somebody like you and be like, nah, man, there's no solution. Like we can't, like da-da-da-da, right? So you don't have to have a solution. You can just say, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's tough.
It's tough.
Yes.
Connecting to that, do you think that there would be like less migrants if the U.S. did not intervene so aggressively during like the Cold War?
I think that if we didn't, probably you got to imagine if that we created an economic system where other countries around us, especially in Latin America, were able to compete freely on the free market. Everything that you all are learning about in the Smeel Business School, by the way, free market capitalism, I'm sure if we created a system of free market capitalism, these people wouldn't be walking across Mexico to come to the U.S. Yeah. But the problem is we don't know that because we don't study it. I happen to study it because I was a Latin Americanist. So I'm like, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. If you don't think about it and you only see like the border or you only see new immigrants in your community, you wouldn't understand what the root causes are at all. And you would just say, oh, a bunch of people just showed up.
Yeah. If you don't see what the root causes are, you can't fix the problem. That's part of the issue. Let's say we sent $50 million to Sudan to combat famine, right? Where's the $50 million go? Let me just point out why this is important. You hear about us giving foreign aid away, giving money to other countries. We're always giving money to other countries, and we should spend it at home. Right? Why are we giving money to those people? We should spend it here. We have problems here. We have to fix our bridges. We have people who are hungry here. Man, why are we sending money somewhere else? Right? Like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? Like, spend it here. So, bro, where's the money go?
The 50 million turns into material goods that we give as aid, which undercut the domestic economies of those countries. And so they become dependent on us because they can buy those goods that we deliver at a market for a cheaper price than they would the goods that are
Okay,
in
but
their own
hang
country.
on. I got you. Okay, how about just grain? We send $50 million. We spend $50 million to send grain. Where does the $50 million go?
It goes to American farmers and American businesses to make the grain.
Okay.
And then on an American ship to go to a American logistics company and just stimulates an entire economy to deliver the grain.
You get it to the dock workers. You ship it over there. You arrive. There's American companies that are logistics companies that are doing it. And then at some point in time, the Sudanese get the grain.
Right.
And then it gets transported by Sudanese companies. But it's like, but $50 million when a good 45 million of it is going to get spent right here. So when you think about that, right, that's kind of a significant shift.
Yeah, for
You know
sure.
what I mean? It's just I don't know. It's just a way to think about.
Yeah.
Everything is complicated. Nothing is as it seems.
It like kind of makes it seem like foreign aid helps the United States more than it helps the other countries.
Yeah. Like when people, you say like, oh, we just gave, $500 million of aid to Israel. It's like, that's $500 million that got spent here in the United States and given to Israel. Those of you who are anti-Israel, who are critiquing that aid, for example, or military aid to Pakistan or whatever. It's here, and then we send it over there on our ships. Taxpayers pay for it all. You get it? But taxpayers pay other American companies, other American citizens, people here. The money's going back into the pockets of people here. You see, that's really, really important. It's just not something that we think about. That's why sociology, by the way, that's why it's cool, right?
For sure. You hear all these things on the news. It's like, oh, we're giving foreign aid. Oh, there's a refugee crisis. Oh, there's destabilization or a civil war or something. And it's like, if you really look at the money flows, a lot of it incriminates my country.
Well, that's how half the people in this class can be part of the richest 1% of the global population. More than half, right?
Do you think people's problem with foreign aid outside of like the Sudan example, but maybe for Israel or for Ukraine or for Pakistan, do you think the problem there is that, especially with our last example with David up there, that the money's going back into Americans' pockets, but the wealthy Americans, especially with the military-industrial complex, is that a problem?
Well, maybe it disproportionately goes to certain people in the United States for sure. No question about that. But, it's still coming back here. It's still coming back into the economy. The economy is the economy, the GDP. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you could question that. You could make that argument. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you could break it down further, for sure.